across the galaxy. This is where conspiracy on the wild side meets the perspective of a lifetime. This is the Free Zone with your host, Freeman.
Hello and welcome to the Free Zone. Well, I have a very special show for you tonight. We are talking with Jay Weidner. He's come out with a new feature-length film which is just mind-blowing. It's called The Last Avatar. You can find it at thelastavatarmovie.com. Of course, Jay's work is all at sacredmysteries.com, and he is no stranger to the Free Zone. So to put all the to-do aside, everyone knows who Jay Weidner is, so let's just dig in. Hello, Jay. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Freeman.
Hey, it's great to talk to you. Wow, what a film! Oh my God, I mean, just right off the bat, I want people to know how much effort went into this thing. I'm an amateur filmmaker. I know what goes into just making something dumb for an hour. This must have been some epic adventure for you.
Oh, it was. As I was joking about 3.5 years into the process, if I had known that it was going to take me 3.5 years, I would have never done it. And then, 4.5 years, I was still saying that, and now we're almost 5 years. Finally, it's out, so I don't have to say that anymore. But yeah, it was the kind of thing that you got into, and then you just couldn't get out of, like a labyrinth. And once you got into it, you had either two choices: one, complete failure, or go on. And I just kept choosing go on, and I'm glad I did, because the results are. I wanted to know if our side could make something that was technically proficient as their side can make things, but still have the message be a much different message than a conventional Hollywood film would have. And so that was my goal, and I got about 80% of it. I was not 100% there, but for the budget, hey, I'm not complaining.
Right. I was very impressed. We talked last time just before you got this film done. It's been a few months on us, maybe longer. And you had described a lot of the graphics that you were hoping to see, and finally getting to see all of that. It really was just dynamic. I mean, the Metatron cube, the body, all of it, the chakras, everything that was coming out. I was really impressed.
Oh, thanks. You're one of the few that will actually get it, I think. And, so I hope it spreads out to a larger audience. I got, emails from, surprisingly, a lot of people under 25 who are absolutely mind blown by it. So I think I'm hitting a much younger demographic than I originally intended, which I'm really happy for, because maybe it can influence them in a good way. I got a letter from an 18-year-old today, a 25-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 17-year-old, which is not usually my range. My range is more about upper 20s and 30s for getting emails. So I was surprised by that. And they all saw the film. Some saw it numerous times. So maybe I'm, mistaking my demographic a little bit, and maybe there really is a more enlightened generation below the millennials coming in here.
Yeah, let's not underestimate them for sure. Those are the people I want to talk to. Those are the people that are going to make the changes, and having this character Kalki come forward and give this message that it's time to give the message is a really good ploy.
Yeah, that was my biggest problem that I faced, was how do you give a message without sounding preachy, and how do you give a message, how do you defeat the Illuminati without firing a shot? And it was that was my dilemma, because I didn't want the hero of the movie to get down into the morass that the bad guys constantly get into. And so it was a bit of a dilemma, but I think I pulled it off. And, the acting, I think the guy who plays Kalki, Alex Polinsky, I think he did a really good job. And Adi, who plays Mary and also did the music, is just, stupendous, I think, as a performer.
Exceptionally talented. Oh, my God, you really found one there.
I did. I think actually Adi might have a big career. After I hadn't seen the movie in a while, and I finally saw it recently, and I think I was more blown away by her than anything else in the movie. Just her screen presence and her charisma was just so overwhelming. I was amazed by it.
I got to say, my favorite character in the whole thing was Kalki's mom. She went all out. I mean, there are no small parts.
Yeah, she really did go all out. I was really trying to create kind of, that late 70s, early 80s horror film kind of feel, and I kind of described it. She was a marvelous stage actor, and she said, "What are you looking for?" And I said, those movies where the mom's always wrong and she comes after the kid and makes him feel guilty and then ends up making a psycho mass murderer out of the kid because she's always using him in the wrong way. She goes, "Oh yeah, Friday the 13th." I said, "Yeah, that's it. Play it like that." So that was a lot of fun. And she did go all out, and I was really happy with her almost overcharged performance.
Yes. Yeah, it was well, let's cover a few of the concepts, if you don't mind, that you went into in this film.
I would love to, actually.
All right, the Gnostic theory, the archon intrusion. I mean, this is one that is bubbling to the surface all over the place, and I love to see this shown in this kind of idea. And yeah, let's just, there was so much in this that really was a reflection maybe of theosophy and even Luciferianism. So I wanted you to address that a little bit in the idea of the archons and how the Gnostics played into this.
Yeah, well, I've always been really attracted to the Gnostic understanding of reality, and I'm not really a Gnostic, I guess, but I just attracted to it as a intellectual and philosophical concept, and it's not new; it's old. It's not something that was invented 150 years ago by some occultist in England. It was, it came from the Nag Hammadi texts, which were written, over 2,000 years ago. So there is some efficacy to the whole thing. And anyway, the whole idea was that there was this off-planet alien entity called the Archons, which had invaded our culture and our society and were turning us into corrupt beings when actually we weren't. And this is the whole precept of the whole Gnostic beliefs, is that what happened was that we were actually a pretty cool species living here pretty much in peace. And then one day these entities, these kind of parasites, showed up and entered into us, and this is all mentioned in the Emerald Tablet by Thoth and all these other books too. It's not just one source. There's a lot of sources for this, ancient sources, and they got into our councils of men and came as men. In other words, they disguised themselves as men, it says, and they broke into the councils of men and became the leaders of the world, which archon means, king or leader and or lord. And so, I like this idea because I actually believe the human race is actually intrinsically a pretty good people. I don't believe we really like to hurt each other. I don't really think we like to kill each other. I think actually we don't relish it at all. And we have to almost be guided via mind control into this kind of violence towards each other. And a lot of it is because we're asleep. When we wake up and realize that we're all deeply spiritual beings, even the animals and plants, then we take on a different view of everything, which what the archons do not want us to see. They don't want us to see ourselves as we really are. They want us to see each other as just commodities that, life is cheap, and we can trade each other and have slavery and all that. And I was trying to get that across, that the archons in the movie, who are the leaders of the world in the movie, they really don't care about us, and they just want us as slaves, and they don't want us to wake up. And that's the whole point of this society, is to keep us asleep, whether it's the movies or the TV or whatever, which is why I have him break into the satellite networks and everything, because I want him to break into the archon edifice of control, at least for a few minutes, break it down and let the truth out. Which, by the way, on a level speaking right now, guys like Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, I guess, are kind of breaking down the matrix right in front of our eyes, whether they want to or not. So it's kind of interesting to see in the election system that the two renegades are actually shattering the matrix in a lot of ways. So the truth is getting out, and nobody can stop it, whether they want it out or not. So it's gratifying to see that, it's actually happening in a real world way. Another thing that's really interesting about this whole thing is I did not know this until after the movie got done. There are a whole lot of young people, young males in America who think that they are Kalki. I did not know this, and they're beginning to come forth and make themselves known to me. And I realized that there could be 100,000 Kalkis out there right now. And then that made me think, well, maybe maybe the prophecy wasn't just one Kalki, but that there would be hundreds of thousands of Kalkis rising forth to right the wrongs. And wow, that really got me going when I started meeting these young guys who all thought that they were Kalki. Long before the movie came out, they did not know the movie was coming out. This is just them on their own doing their own research, which I find fascinating.
Wow, so Kalki is an official character throughout mythos, or?
Yes, he's a character from the Vedic text. He's the 10th avatar of Vishnu, the last avatar that Vishnu lays down on the people of the earth. The last two avatars, the 8th avatar is Krishna, and the 9th avatar is the Buddha. The 10th avatar, Kalki, is the male counterpart of Kali, and he will come during the Kali Yuga. And he will come to, what you want to do is you want to follow Kalki, because if Kalki fails, then they're sending Kali. And Kali is not going to deal or negotiate with anybody. Kali's just going to come and get rid of all of us. So Kalki is coming here to do a correction, to get rid of the powers that be, the archons, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. And if that does not work, and if he cannot influence us to get rid of this evil which permeates the Kali Yuga, then Kali will come, and she will spare no one. It will be complete devastation of all, because we did not rise up to stop it. Then we are culpable. So Kalki gives us the ones who where we do not understand what's going on. So Kalki comes and explains to us what's going on, which he does in the movie, and then shows us a way out, and then says, you are responsible now for taking care of the problem that I just presented to you. And if we do not take care of that problem ourselves, if we do not rise up and become courageous and vanquish these evil critters, then we're all going to be held responsible at this point. Right now, we're not being held responsible because we did not know. But soon, we're not going to be able to have that excuse anymore, because the internet, movies, shows like yours are making it so no one can escape the truth. And therefore, we're now moving into the second wave of the awakening, of which I believe that the film The Last Avatar is the end of the first wave of the awakening, which is just opening up to the knowledge of what's going on and realizing our spiritual potential. But now comes the hard part, which is the second wave of the awakening, where we have to extract these guys from our society and get rid of them and figure out how to do this without bloodshed. And that's going to be tough, because these guys are entrenched like I've never seen. And I sit in a certain kind of position with my job and everything, and I can kind of see what's happening around the world in a way that I wasn't able to see before. And I can tell you the syndicates and the mafias and the elites that are in control have such a firm grasp on some of the most inane crap that you've ever seen, that the next phase is going to be extremely dangerous as we move to get rid of vaccines, we move to get rid of GMOs and all of the other archon imprints that are in our world right now. These guys know what we're doing. They're watching us, and they're planning way ahead to stop us. And I am convinced of this, and I'm astonished by it. But we still are fooling them, because we're moving and advancing with the awakening so quickly that they're scrambling, but are they scrambling hard enough? And I don't think they are. I really don't. So it's a long answer to a short question, but anyway.
No, great answer. And I was wondering, did you realize that Kali was projected onto the Empire State Building when you released the last Avatar movie?
I did. It was like 2 days after. I was like stunned. I'm just like my jaw dropping open, going, "What is going on?" And there's something happening. And what's funny is the Christian fundamentalists said that they projected a demon onto the Empire State Building. I'm like, no, that's not a demon. Trust me, it's something far worse than a demon.
I really do wish people would get their knowledge base up a little bit higher.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It really is. These gods were around a lot longer than in any of the Western religion gods. Kali, Kalki, Shakti,
Shiva.
all of them. Shiva, they've been around for hundreds of thousands of years. They're the original gods of this planet, and to treat that without reverence is a sacrilege as far as I'm concerned. And I hold a deep reverence for the Indian religion and the Vedic texts, and there's a lot of truth in there, and I think we're all remiss by avoiding and ignoring such things.
No doubt. I'm definitely into Ayurvedic healing and medicine.
Yeah.
I use that. Well, you kind of brought up the galactic history a bit as you brought the Lemurians into this story. You want to kind of outline that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm really very interested in pre-catastrophic civilizations of the Pacific area. And one of the ones that really intrigues me, and always has intrigued me, was this legend of there being a trans-Pacific civilization called Lemuria, and which was in New Zealand, parts of Australia, Japan, Indonesia, Hawaii, Peru, California, parts of Oregon, a little bit of Alaska. It was just all around the rim, and it was a ship-using culture that was very proficient at using boats to get around the Pacific currents. And there's a lot of evidence for this. There's Nadal in the middle of the Pacific, which is a construct which no one can explain, and a lot of other ruins, including some ruins in California, which I've witnessed down near Malibu and up near Pleasant Point in Northern California. And so I became intrigued because I was living in the area about this and the legends, especially from the Native Americans, about these shining beings that lived in the area, especially around Mount Shasta, and which also white people had reported seeing, including an article in 1936 LA Times in the travel section about a travel writer who goes up to Mount Shasta and actually sees the lights of the light beings up on the mountainside at night. And so I got intrigued with this whole idea and began finding out that there was all these other stories of tunnels in the area around Mount Shasta and cities underneath it.
One current thing that I've been seeing is these light shafts. A lot of people posting this on Facebook, and I just thought I'd throw this in because this has been a phenomenon that's showing up a lot right now, is these light beams coming down.
I know. I was quite amazed by those shafts, and I don't know what to say about that, except that there does seem to be an interaction between the plasma dimension that surrounds us and our dimension. In other words, I've come to the conclusion that what's going on here is that there's a parallel biosphere to our biosphere, and this other biosphere is made up of plasma and electromagnetic forms, and it's huge. It goes out way out beyond the orbit of the Earth, hundreds of miles, and it's highly charged electrical fields in which portals and dimensions can open up. And down here on Earth, this parallel electromagnetic biosphere interacts with mountain peaks and heavily compressed forms of granite, and in other words, sacred spots in different places have these openings and portals and parallels into this parallel biosphere that's all around us, in which there are intelligent plasma beings. I don't know how else to describe them. I've actually witnessed them, and I'm now completely convinced that I'm right on this. And I'm doing a lot of research, and maybe in my next movie, or the second to my next movie, will be about these plasma beings. But anyway, that's what I think is a lot of what's going on in places like Mount Shasta. There's all this compressed minerals and stuff from past volcanic activity, which is causing a piezoelectric charge, a buildup of charge, which is causing portals from the compressed electromagnetic energy to appear, and all sorts of things can pass in and out of these portals. And it's not just Mount Shasta, it's all over the place. I mean, Hawaii has them, southern Colorado has them, Mount Rainier has it. There's, a lot of places that have this kind of electrical charge, which causes, I don't know, wormholes possibly would be a good word for it. But I think that's what's going on Mount Shasta. So I kind of placed the scenes of the movie up in Mount Shasta to kind of get this Lemurian wormhole effect going, as if the Lemurians were using wormholes to come between this time and their time, which is what it seems like from the reports of people who witnessed these humans.
Okay, well, that answered that question. I was, yeah. All right, well, that takes us straight up to sacred geometry, as you were talking about the concepts of these vortices, and you brought in Metatron's cube and those great graphics and the whole morphing into sacred geometry. So there's a lot of talk about our planet being in a cube, that we're locked in a bit of a prison. And I think this will tie into the last parts that we'll talk about, like the divine feminine and the light body. But the sacred geometry, this is a critical ingredient, something that's been in the cosmos without, for eternity. It is the cosmos. So let's take it to sacred geometry.
Well, when you stare down at any kind of sacred geometry, or you look at a three-dimensional sacred geometry, of course, you're struck by the symmetry and, the dodecahedron or octahedron or any of them. You're struck by the beauty of it and everything. But what's interesting about sacred geometry is that, again, going back to this plasma electric universe, there are experiments right now where they take two separate charged magnetic holes, which are shaped like bowls, and they place them together, and then they place a little thin, plate glass plane at that equator part between these two magnets. They turn the magnets on, and they start putting little tiny steel balls down through the top hole of this vortex torus double magnet system. And when the balls hit the little plate glass, which lies right at the equator, they begin automatically forming sacred geometry. The balls become magnetized, and the balls begin, either bouncing off the other balls, which have the same charge as them, or become attracted to the balls that have the opposite charge on the ends. And what happens is after a couple seconds of confusion, the little steel balls absolutely roll right into symmetry, into sacred geometrical forms on this flat plane. And that tells me that the universe is the very intrinsic structure of the universe is the sacred geometrical forms. And the reason I brought them into the movie was to get them out onto a big screen, because no one ever has yet, and in animation, which I thought was really important, because just getting those in your head will begin to change you. But secondly, to start getting this idea that the basic forms of matter are based on these deeply spiritual and symmetrical principles, which is proof of an intelligence underneath all of matter, and an intelligence that seeks beauty and symmetry, and in a world of ugliness and asymmetrical universes, that's what's so pleasing about sacred geometry, and why I wanted to get it in the movie. When I first put it in the movie, by the way, which was about 3 years ago, I put it in the movie. That scene that's in was one of the most difficult scenes for me to construct, and I put it in, and a bunch of people that were involved in the movie were like complaining, like, "What is that stuff? What are you putting in there? What are those things?" And I said, "Just believe me, these things are useful. They have a lot to say. Just let me keep them in there." And then they went to Burning Man the next year, and of course everybody was wearing all the sacred geometry stuff. So I didn't have to hear any more about it from my cast and crew about how they didn't understand sacred geometry, because it started to become cool again. So I'm really grateful for that too. And that again is those kids under 25 who really think sacred geometry is just the coolest.
Well, it's an amazing thing because honestly, there's no representations of it in nature. It just is a creation of our own imagination and sophistication of the human mind, really.
It is, although there are spiral forms in nature which form it, but you're right, it's a symmetry. It's as if the human spirit and mind needs beauty and symmetry, and I think it does. I think we're uncomfortable in a mess. I think we're uncomfortable in cities that aren't well thought out and well put together, and I think it affects our psyche. And certainly the ancients thought that. They thought that cities should be laid out in these sacred geometric forms, and I wonder what kind of world we would have if we lived, in a cities where the streets were laid out like a flat dodecahedron or something. Would that change the way that we are? I think that it would, actually. I think that, and it's another reason why I stuck these forms into the movie. I wanted to get that in your head so that even those people who did not know what they were looking at would become curious about it and maybe go look further. And especially males. Males are very attracted to sacred geometry because of the symmetry. And it's one of the ways that I've found that you can get males involved in this kind of spiritual awakening kind of work. And so that's another reason I stuck it in.
That is funny, and it's true. The feelings, and obviously, I'm just making a joke about males and their feelings, but the story, Kalki's story in the last Avatar, really does revolve around a love story, as all great stories do, and this then comes to this concept of the divine feminine, this destroyed concept that we have in our society of a patriarchal society, and very few going to this concept of the divine feminine, the nurturing that is necessary to heal the planet. And like you're saying, males have a hard time taking in the touchy-feely side of this whole situation.
Yeah, it's true. That's why I wanted the person that initiates Jack or Kalki in the movie to be the representation of this divine feminine, this kind of smoldering memory of everything that's ever happened, and a little bit angry maybe about the fact that they've had to put up with the archons and everything. I tried to make sure that there wasn't just all sweetness and light, and this was just a little meditation. I wanted to make sure that you saw that it was painful, and she maybe was a little bit pissed off about everything that had happened with the patriarchy, which is basically an archon creation, because it was easier to run us if we had a patriarchy. And you can trace all that back, by the way, the beginnings of quote, civilization, unquote, when slavery and mining operations and all these other things began. The only ones that had nice things were the archons. The rest of us were just their slaves. And right now we're at a point where the archons have to worry about us waking up, especially with movies like this. And it's going to be interesting to watch what happens to them. But yeah, the love story in the movie is I don't know. It actually happened completely naturally within the script, and it was nice because the two actors fell in love with each other during the making of the movie. So a lot of the scenes with them was not faked; it was real.
I kind of thought that.
Yes, that really helps in sincerity, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. It's like the difference between two people in a porno film. They just met, 20 minutes before they started, and they really don't like each other, and they're just doing it for money, and it's really not very interesting. But when two people are really in love with each other and they act like they are, then you can feel it. It comes across on the screen, I think, in a real way.
Yeah, I mean, all right, Jay. I was a little shocked to have the full love scene there. but it was nice. It was really nice.
Yeah. There was no nudity.
No.
No.
And since they were in love, I can accept it even more.
Exactly.
Well, so this idea of the divine feminine is a difficult one to start to get out to the public, especially in the situation we're in right now, where most people are ready to attack their oppressor and they're ready to fight. And when we come back with the ideas of nurture and security, the ideas that are wrapped up inside of the mother, and people tend to fight against this idea of looking to nurture instead of fighting, instead of attacking the enemy.
Yeah, that's a great point. The Reichian analyst James DeMayo wrote a great book called Sahara Asia, and it was about how 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, desertification began taking over the areas of the Middle East and parts of Asia. And as the trees died out and the rain stopped and the desert came in, the patriarchy came in, and conditions got worse and worse and worse until men were just slave drivers, children were just slaves, and women were just there to bear slaves. And he asks in this book, how did this come about? And he postulates that it has to do with, cutting down the forests and stopping the rains from falling. But I think what's going on here is this is actually, to me, evidence of the Archon invasion, and that the Archons came in just about that time in the Nag Hammadi, they say, and I don't think the Archons like water. I don't think they like softness. I think they like desert. I think they don't like forests. They don't like streams and rivers. They like death. They like as much death as they can get. And the desertification was really the symptom of the Archon problem, not suddenly rain stopped coming. I think that as people harden up towards each other, they actually affect the atmosphere around them. I think it's interesting that California hasn't seen any rain in 4 years, and when you go visit California, everybody's so damn angry out there. They're yelling at each other out on the highways and honking at each other, and everybody's so damn angry. I'm like, well, no wonder you haven't got any rain. You've got to soften up your attitudes here and start looking at each other like people instead of just commodities. And I'm not saying all people in California are bad. They're not. I have a lot of friends out there. I'm just saying that the attitudes have hardened up a little bit out there. And I just wonder what would happen if we'd all just kind of soften up. I wonder if the rains would come back. And I think, this is, certainly what seems to be going on. And the harshness always begins in the driest of altitudes and then seems to dissipate as you move into forests and cooler air, and people become more loving, and women are allowed positions of authority. As you move, north from the Middle East, as you go north, it just gets more and more friendlier, less and less oppressive, more and more friendly towards women. Same thing's true in the United States. If you go on the West Coast and you go on the west side of the Cascade Mountains in Seattle and Portland and San Francisco, you get, a lot of tolerance, and everything is nice and green. There's plenty of water. Then you go to the other side of the Cascades, and it's all dried up, and everybody's intolerant and not nurturing. And so I think there's a lot of that involved in the environment that we're in. And Wilhelm Reich, the great philosopher, said if we just learn to love each other, all the plants and everything would come back. And I wonder if that isn't true, actually.
I really do feel that way. With all of my heart, I feel that we generate reality, and that these Archon forces, utilizing the media mainstream like you showed in the movie, are convincing us to do completely opposite of what we would naturally do.
Yeah, that's why I have the tree grow out of the ground at the end of the movie after he converts the Lord Archon away from the Archons. I have a tree grow. It's right after that scene, because that's what will happen. The earth will come back as soon as these negative forces are pushed back. In the myth of King Arthur, Guinevere and Sir Lancelot have an affair, and she and he, who is Arthur's best friend, betray Arthur, and Arthur goes into, I can't remember, 10 years or 20 years of depression. Because he's been betrayed by his best friend and his wife. And in that 20 years, there's a huge drought in England. And everything dries up, and everything starts dying. And then suddenly, Lancelot feels really bad because he betrayed his friend, and he comes back and asks for forgiveness, and so does the Lady Guinevere. And Arthur forgives them, and all of a sudden it starts raining, and all the plants come back, and this mythos is embedded in our very being, that we have this ability, and that they've done studies of crops on farms, and they've noted over and over again that the healthiest crops grow nearest the farmhouse, and as you move out from the farmhouse, the crops get worse and worse. And they determine it has something to do with the love of the people living in the house. And I believe that.
Love is an ingredient. There's no doubt about it. I cook. I know it.
I put it in my food. I know that.
Oh, yeah. That's one of our greatest forms of attack is feeding people loved food. I do that quite a bit. And
I do too.
Finding ourselves. This is another ingredient to this. Now, we live in a world where we see a world that does not exist. We see this perfect world. We know it's attainable, utopia that's out of our reach. But in our dream time, in our sleep states, we experience some of the concepts that we see or feel that are possible for the human. The being light flight, being able to fly, being able to telepresence into different bilocations. Our dream world, and also just the very fact that we know something is wrong and that things could be better. This whole Dreamtime scenario comes into the puzzle as well in The Last Avatar.
Yeah, it does. I'm glad you picked it up because it's actually one of my favorite parts of the movie. I used to hang with Robert Lawler, who wrote this great book, Voices of the Dreamtime. Voices of the First Day, which is about the Aborigines in Australia. And he actually traveled and hung with the Aborigines and found out they were a very sophisticated culture. And he told me that they believe that things manifested in what they called the dream time before they manifested in our real time. And, I know that that's true because that's how I live my life. And so in the movie, I wanted to kind of present this idea that our dreams are actually part of a school, and that if you're paying attention, and you're only going to get good grades in school if you are paying attention. If you're paying attention at your dreams at night, you're getting lessons. And if you put it all together by writing it down every night and then once a week studying what you learned that week, you'll begin figuring out what your lessons are and what you have to do. And so I kind of added that into the movie, where the central characters are in a dream school pretty much their whole life, and they're not quite sure what they're seeing in the dream school, but they know they have to take notes because it's going to become important later. And, there's confusion on the part of the characters and stuff because the dream school itself it's difficult to interpret, just like all dreams are difficult to interpret. And they missed the boat a couple times, which I think adds a lot of credibility to the script. And because we do get it wrong. But they finally get it right. And the manifestations of the dream time happen in real time within, and this is what magic is. Magic is imagining something and then figuring out how that something is going to move from your imagination to concrete reality, and then how to actually form that concrete reality. And that's how all of us live our lives. We're living our dreams. That's what we say about successful people. And I'm not, a worldly successful person. I'm a successful person within the pursuits of what I want. And I can say, I've lived my dreams. I never wanted to get wealthy, so no, I never got wealthy. But what I wanted in my life, I got because I dreamt it first, excuse me. And I wanted to get that across in the movie, how important it is to manifest these things. And we're not talking about The Secret, where you're imagining that you're getting this 20-bedroom house in Beverly Hills. If you're imagining that, just go get a good job. I mean, that's all you got to do. That's easy. But, you know, if you want people, manifest something like you want people around you to be happy, now you're talking about a serious manifestation. How does that happen? How does something that doesn't involve materialism occur? And I think that's kind of how you have to work the dream time. You can't be asking for, like, I want to be a millionaire. That's not going to the way it works. You have to be more subtle than that to get the dream time to work. You will get what you want, but it won't be what you want. That's what I'm trying to say, you know.
Yeah, it's never what you expect.
That's right. So make sure it's something altruistic and generous and not something just self-centered, because you will get it. You know, the movie, I forget the name of it, Brendan Fraser was in it, where he's constantly being tempted by the devil. It was a great movie. I can't remember the name. Elizabeth. Yeah, Bedazzled. Well, he wants to his first wish is he wants to become a millionaire, right? So he wakes up suddenly and he's speaking Spanish and he's living in this incredible mansion.
Right.
He's really a Colombian drug lord. He's wealthy and everything, but, you know, as he takes his binoculars and looks at the approaching objects across the jungle, he sees it's the American forces coming to take him out, right? So he's wealthy, but is it really what he wants? And I think Bedazzled really answers that kind of question, or at least poses the realities of the choice that you have when you decide to create your own reality.
Yeah, we're locked in an individual crisis, and you know, there's so much identity politics going on, and it's completely being just spawned out of the mainstream media, all the narcissism that's going on. It's very hard to get people to start to say, how do I fix the world, not myself? Yeah,
well, maybe you do have to start on yourself and realize that you know, first off, we're not just beings stuck here on some planet with no purpose. We all have a purpose. We need to find that purpose. And if you don't have a purpose, you need to keep trying until you find that purpose. You need to do what you want to do as long as you're not hurting anyone. If you're not doing what you want to do, then you need to stop what you're doing and start to do what you want to do. Don't worry, you're not going to die. You're not going to starve to death. Believe me, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
It just takes courage. I think that's really the message of The Last Avatar. The hero is a young American male who has been kind of taught not to be courageous, to kind of slough off and to not take control of their life. And through the movie, he learns that he has to take control, not just of his life, but the ones that he loves. And then he finds out actually he loves everyone and he wants to help everyone. And I think that's kind of how we have to be, out of our self-centered world and into a more a coexistent world of wow, we're in this with everybody, and how can we work together to really make this better, and to use these special powers, which I do present in the movie, that we intrinsically possess, you know, like the dream time and a lot of the other things, to not so much defeat the archons, is just create such a great place that they have no place in that world. And then they are defeated because they're being ignored. And that would be the greatest way to defeat them.
Exactly. So developing our light body, what practices do you have thoughts that people can take and use to start to develop the light body? I know that your light body just expands and radiates and pulses when you are finding and feeling your purpose. I mean, goosebumps, hair standing on the back of your neck. You can't believe the situation that you're in as miracles seem to unfold before you. This to me seems when you're starting to really form inside of your light body.
That's right. I agree. And that's, again, your light body is almost like a plasma form that is created by perfect connection of the electrical forces within the body running up and down the spine like a magnet. And I try to portray it, visually in the movie. And I think that's probably the most important part of the movie, because what I learned from some of the graphics of Dan Winter and the paintings of Alex Gray back, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, was that by actually seeing the light body and the chakra system and how they work in action, you can understand it in a very real way. You don't need all the spiritual teachings, although they help. It helps to go study Tibetan Buddhism and some of the Vedic texts on the light body and study Kundalini Yoga. Those all, and you should do that. But you can almost understand it just by looking at it. Just by looking at the paintings of Alex Gray, you can almost understand how that hyperdimensional body works and forms the human body underneath it, and how you can grow your light body. And this is what being psychic is, and how you can use your light body to propel your light into your light source, into astrophysical adventures and everything. And then you begin looking at everything else, all the other animals and all the other people and all the plants, and you see the patterns in the fur, and you see the patterns in the plants, and you see the patterns even in humans, and you realize that we're reflections all of the sacred geometrical forms that embed themselves inside this higher dimensional light body which exists all around us. And we can power that light body just by first knowing it's there and then finding different apparatus to control it. But just knowing it's there is so important, and knowing that you have this light plasma being that you cannot see, but that has tremendous power, and that you can use this to not exert your will, but to co-inhabit the universe around you and co-create reality, which is really what it's for. It's not for domination. It's to create a mirror so that the light body creates a reality which is mirrored in the reality that surrounds the light body and is imbued with light until everything becomes imbued with light. And then there's no darkness at all. And believe me, the archons are completely impervious to a fully coherent, healthy light body, and you don't ever have to worry about them.
Well, in the words of Kalki, we are becoming conscious of our power to remake the world.
Yep, we are.
I am so glad that you're getting that message out to everybody. It's critical that we're not looking for a savior, in my opinion, that we realize that we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Exactly.
Well, so to wrap this all up, wow, this has covered so many concepts that people want to get their heads wrapped around. You've packaged it in this nice feature-length film with amazing graphics, showing the light body, showing the chakra points, highlighting all the details that we've covered in this last hour. And I recommend everyone get out there and check out The Last Avatar. So other than going to thelastavatarmovie.com, is there other ways for people to view this?
If you want to go directly and view it, it's watch.thelastavatarmovie.com. If you just want to see learn about the film, go to the website, thelastavatarmovie.com. You can click through there. And I think I'm going to recommend that everyone listen to this radio interview, because I think it's the most succinct explanation of the concepts that I've been able to do so far. So I really thank you for your good questions.
Hey, well, thank you, Jay. I do try to be a good host.
You are.
Fantastic. Well, if you have anything left for the listeners to lay on them that we didn't get to.
No, except just realize that the Kubrick's Odyssey 3, I believe it or not, is actually going to be able to come out now that I finish this movie. So
I was
hang on, it's coming.
After 5 years of work, where are you at now? Are you just taking a nice break, or no, you're jumping right back in, huh?
I am, yeah. I have to get this done. My fans will kill me.
Absolutely. Kubrick's Odysseys, they are epic as well. You know, it's great to see you take it from the documentary form. I mean, I've been watching your stuff all the way back to the alchemy of the cross of Henday.
Oh, yeah.
And on up and through it all now. And it's just an amazing progression to now making full feature-length films. You give me hope, Jay. You do.
Well, thank you, man. I worked hard.
I believe that. So, folks, Jay Weidner, you can find it at thelastavatarmovie.com or get over to sacredmysteries.com and check out all the alchemy that Jay Weidner's been showing us throughout the years. And I want to thank you all for tuning in and subscribing to freemantv.com and keeping this thing going. It's going to get bigger, better, and bolder, I promise you, and we're going to take this to the streets, and we're going to take this message out, and we will all become Kalki to change the world that we live in through our hearts, through our consciousness, and love. So thank you, Jay, for...
Thank you, man. You're great.